People, there are seismic political and basically influential maneuvers right now that could indicate that we're going for a massive, massive Bitcoin pump, despite the Fed not going to basically cut rates until much further in the year. Now, the PPI and the CPI were both above expected. They're still going down year by year, but they didn't go down nearly as much as people thought. So the Fed has no real reason to start cutting interest rates until later. The economy's not really doing that bad. Employment is still very high, and consumer spending, even adjusted for inflation, is still quite high. So if people are complaining that they don't have money, they ain't spending like they don't have money. And as long as they're not spending like they don't have money, the Fed isn't really going to do jack because it has absolutely no reason to. Like I said, Jerome Powell does not care about the election. He's probably going to get replaced regardless of who's in office. And he's not of the same political party as Joe Biden. And also, Joe Biden is not a pushy president. Unlike Trump, he will not try to basically publicly shame Jerome Powell into lowering interest rates much faster. So that's not going to really help him with the election, but Jerome Powell really does not care. But despite that, we're probably still going up. And there is a big event that maybe some of you didn't notice today. And no, I'm not talking about Elizabeth Warren flying the flag over the Capitol building to honor Satoshi Nakamoto, even though she's staunchly anti-Bitcoin. That you can basically just buy on her website. You can just pay for, I guess, a congressman or a senator to fly the American flag to honor, I guess, various people. Don't think you can do it for someone that's absolutely ridiculous like Adolf Hitler, but Satoshi Nakamoto, she didn't actually say no to that, obviously, because, she kind of has to, and she wasn't petty enough to just say, no, I'm not going to do it. So the American flag was flown, and she did sign her certificate honoring Satoshi Nakamoto for bringing financial freedom to people. Now, you can't do that for certain government officials. Otherwise, someone would actually pay for Gary Gensler to honor Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larson, and that would be hilarious because I think that would completely undermine Gary Gensler and his cases against Ripple. But he actually might be replaced regardless if Biden's actually elected or not, because I think he is going to become a political liability for the Democratic Party. But what's the event that I think could actually signal a shakeup in the landscape? It's this event. And what I'm talking about is that big banks are lobbying for a Bitcoin ETF role. Big banks like Bank of America, like Jamie Dimon's JP Morgan, they want a piece in it. And they are lobbying hard for the SEC to change a rule. And of course, Gary Gensler also wants to narrow the definition of crypto asset to exclude traditional financial asset DLTs. I mean, that's not Gary Gensler, that's the letter to the SEC. But they want to change the rules so they can get into crypto. Now, this might not make a lot of you crypto traditionalist idealists happy, but for the rest of us that just want to make money, this is great because the banks want to start pouring money. And the thing is, if the banks are involved, then maybe Gary Gensler and Elizabeth Warren can't really do that much about it because Gary Gensler loves to work for the fat cats. It might make Elizabeth Warren hate him even more because Elizabeth Warren is just doesn't really like anything to do with the financial sector besides retirement and pension funds. So if we get those retirement and pension funds to start investing in crypto, she might actually shut up too. And I think that's coming next year. So basically, they want to change this rule known as SAB 121. And it was established in March 22 and has significantly constrained the ability of banks to engage with a burgeoning digital currency market. So they want to change that because banks were all like, oh, we're anti-crypto. It's going to devastate our power to control people. But now they're realizing, hey, you know what? We can't stop it. So we want in on it. Maybe we can subvert it, but during their subversion of it, we'll make lots and lots of money. And since I'm guessing that's what you guys are here for, might be good for you guys. So the coalition, including Bank Policy Institute, the American Bankers Association, the Financial Services Forum, and the Services Industry and Financial Markets Association, points out that the existing crypto regulations have unintentionally excluded banks from digital currency space, especially concerning Bitcoin exchange-traded products, or ETPs. As the 2-year anniversary of issuance of SAB 121 approaches, we believe now would be an appropriate time to examine and discuss the implications of SAB 121 for regulated banking organizations, The group mentioned in their letter to Gensler, marking the approval of spot Bitcoin ETPs as a crucial turning point that necessitates regulatory adjustments. And they want those regulatory adjustments because they don't want to be left out of the game. I think they're going to be pouring a decent amount of energy, resources, and money into this endeavor, and they don't want the SEC's getting in the way. So basically, like, their main issue is the on-balance sheet requirement. It's kind of like a reserve. And the thing is, like, this might actually eventually move exchanges away from the 100% reserve, which it could actually be bad, which they believe negatively impacts U.S. banking organizations and investors due to associated prudential implications. So basically, like, they don't want to hold the on-balance sheet requirement. I'm actually iffy about this. I don't mind them having to hold the on-balance sheet requirement. This rule has effectively barred banks from providing scalable custodial services for digital assets. Additionally, they criticize SAB's 121's broad definition of crypto asset for limiting the DLT technology sector in documenting traditional financial assets. So they want to use the technology as well. So they don't want a broad definition of crypto asset. I think this all helps crypto in the end. And I think like overall regulations are going to get looser for crypto in the end because now the banking sector is pushing for it. They want easier access to customers. They want to be able to provide custody easier, and they're going to be pushing for looser regulations as time goes on. And of course, most people in the crypto world want looser regulations from the government. And with the big banks and the big money and the big donors actually pushing for this, I think it'll only be a little while before they decide to back off. So they're saying, this is from Benzinga. The breadth of definition of crypto asset in SAB 121 will have a chilling effect on banking organizations' ability to develop reasonable use cases for DLT more broadly. They basically just want to be custody for crypto assets and maybe provide other crypto trading services. So they're going to be pushing back on these hardcore regulations from the SEC. They suggest refining the definition of crypto assets and exempting banking organizations from certain on-balance sheet requirements. If you exempt banking organizations, I think you should exempt everyone else too. I think it's completely nonsense if you exempt banking organizations, but you do not exempt anyone else. That just playing favoritism, and I don't really agree with that. So they might eventually start exempting more and more people from these regulations. We believe the recommendations set forth in this letter are consistent with those principles and would remove unintended barriers for well-regulated U.S. banking organizations to engage in certain activities. Eventually, I do think these banking organizations want to become exchanges. They want to become brokers in like the leverage market as well. So they obviously really, really want to get rid of a lot of these regulations. Now, do I think crypto should have no regulations? No, I don't think crypto should have no regulations. There's a lot of scams in crypto, and there'll be even more if there were absolutely no regulations. But the regulations they're actually talking about right now are too draconian, especially like having validators and wallets do KYC AML. I don't really understand that specific point actually, because you already KYC AML all the on and off ramps. So when people buy into Bitcoin and they sell out of Bitcoin, you kind of know who they are. So I'm not exactly sure why they're actually wanting to do so much like KYC AML. On the wallets themselves. I think that eventually will pass as resistance builds up against it in terms of privacy. And I think the banking associations will actually see that as a hindrance too for developing the crypto market in the United States. And when they see that business move elsewhere, they're going to want to lobby Congress to bring that business back and get rid of some of those requirements. Remember, these companies are all about profits and money, and anything that gets in the way, they want to discard, which is why they want to change the rules now. And I believe they'll want to change the rules even more in the future so they can actually make more money. The more money that's free flowing, the more fees they can take. And I think there's always going to be a subsection of people that will depend on banks and traditional institutions to handle even things like crypto. Now, I think that's kind of dumb, honestly, but there are always people that actually kind of want that safety blanket and won't adopt the technology wholeheartedly. And I think the SEC and other regulatory agencies are going to have their hand forced by these big donors, these big financial influencers, basically, and they're not really going to have a choice. And that's why eventually, and maybe very, very quickly, much quicker than we expect, the SEC and these other agencies are going to become much more friendly. Elizabeth Warren can't hold the line by herself. She is just one senator out of 100, and there's still the House of Representatives. If you get both parties to be on board with crypto, which is what I think is happening more and more now as more and more Democratic congressmen, fall towards the crypto camp, like they're not going to be able to keep this up. And I think like, having the big banks start pressuring, the big banks like, pressure both parties because both parties are bought out by them. I really do think they can get like crypto regulations sooner rather than later that are more favorable to the crypto industry overall. Because a lot of these banks, I think they've come around. They want the crypto industry to expand so they can actually hijack it or take advantage of it. But in doing so, they'll make us quite rich. So I'm actually okay with that. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.